This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Just start recording.
All right, then I will call to order this meeting of the Easthampton Planning Board for Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. You're all up first, I guess. Anybody here to speak to anything that is not on the agenda? Anybody online? Raise your hand or unmute yourself. Anything. All right, so moving right along, we've got some minutes. The first one was January 18th, 2022.
Want to amend it?
Yeah.
I don't know if to approve the minutes January 18th. I'll second it.
All right. All in favor of the January 18th minutes? Opposed, abstaining, excellent.
A roll call in there.
Yeah. Next up is minutes from March 15th, 2022.
No issues here. I have motion. Mark.
Second. All in favor? Opposed, abstaining. All right. And finally, we've got April 19th, 2020.
No issues. Motion to approve the minutes April 19th, 2020.
Second. All in favor? Opposed, abstaining. All right. Hey, if no one objects on the board, I'd like to move the two separations to a bunch of sort of minor modifications instead of the past. They either go quickly or they're not minor. So if no one objects, then we'll jump right in. The first one is Ryan Nelson. This is conditional 1C of the special permit for 6973 Loudon. Hello, how you doing?
Hey, yeah, so speak code the podium and then just turn the camera on for that computer. You need to turn the microphone on, just the camera.
Good. I assume you're going to speak to both of these, the 1A and the 1C?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay, great. All right.
So my name is Joseph Kelly, for the record, with Loudville Condominiums LLC. Our address is 632 Westfield Street in West Springfield, Mass. I'm also represented with my partner, Craig Off, who are here. Ryan Nelson's unable to make it. Carl Beck Associates. So right now, the project, we cleared the trees. We have the silk fence up at the project. We're working in our limited work, and we're looking to put in some foundation to begin construction. At the same time, we're still working on the road. So Ryan Nelson's said to Mr. Bag, he's done an inspection throughout the spring. Potential, or there's a wetland on the north, sure it's great. Northwest of the limit of work, but he's been there many times to check it out this spring. There's not any standing water or any amphibian activity to make it a vernal pool. So in his professional opinion, there's no vernal pools on the site for this project.
Okay.
We've also sent in an amendment, so we have a condo association which works similar to an HOA, homeowner association, and we typically do a condo association for the condos, and that has been amended to include the key components of the special permit. And it was sent in, which will be, once approved by you, we'll get it signed and recorded as soon as possible.
So the way I sort of look at this procedure, it looks like the amendment to the trust is sort of like a minor modification if you're not going to do a homeowners association, right? And so I think, but it looks like it incorporates all the same things. And then it looks like, so then the declaration of restrictions, that's under 1C, right? And that's, we have to approve that before it gets recorded, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, planning department, any comments, questions on these things before we open it up?
I think the only thing I would add on behalf of the applicant is that I think there are also, we're hoping to address item B. The 1B is that the wording at the time was the proof of vernal pool certification, application, or denial. And I think what Mr. Kelly was saying is that they don't believe there's even a vernal pool there.
Okay.
I think that's the idea. And I think if the board is agreeable to looking at all three of these, it allows them to clear this condition, which would allow them to get the building permit.
Okay.
So I think that's the
Do
goal.
we have a document for the vernal pool though?
It should be any moment now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for it to come. We do have a formal email, or we do have an email from Ryan Nelson. He's gonna formalize it at some point today. I was hoping to have it before the meeting.
And remind me again, Ryan Nelson's role?
Art Levesque, he's their environmental expert.
Okay.
From the, by any minute now, you mean at this meeting, someone's gonna show up with the battery.
Won't show up. It's supposed to be getting emailed to Mr. Bag and myself.
And is that person at the professional scientist, or what's his certification?
Environmental scientist.
I'm skeptical about not skeptical, but like the source, somebody verifying that one. That's even possible.
I mean, Ryan's been working hand in hand with Cassie. She's been great to work with. So they've been out there many, many times.
Okay. Yeah.
I got a question from Member Hardman of whether I could call in by any chance. I don't know if that's an option, but I think I heard a question about the Conservation Commission. So I think the issue when this was being permitted is that Easthampton doesn't have its own local wetland ordinance.
Right.
So vernal pools are not regulated by the CEP state standard. So I think this was just an attempt to make sure there was no vernal pools. And so, you know, they would be certified, or if there were, to be certified. The one thing I guess I would offer is that the declaration of restrictions does set aside the rest of the property. I think we have stuff been set up to not be disturbed. So I don't know if this is another call coming in, if you were able to get Ryan to call in, or if we're still.
Well, while we wait for him, let's see if there's any comments or questions from the public in the room. Well, I guess first, the planning board member, have any questions?
Although I would say that we could have it right away, but are
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anybody on Google Meets questions or comments? You can either turn on your camera and wave or leave yourself. All right, nothing there. Okay, so I guess let's go through the 1A and the 1C first, and we'll wait on the vernal pool and hope that we get a call or an email from Ryan. So the condominium trust one, it seems to me that if you go through the list, it's the no dumping of yard waste, no future development, maintaining stormwater, no public way, inspect the slope, maintain and replace. So it looks like it captures all the same things there. And it's something that's going to be on record, so we can search for the validation. And then, yeah, you want to speak a little more to the declaration of restrictions and just what it's doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a 2-page declaration that was submitted. I think it's the now therefore, it's item number 1. So the lot is much larger than the area being developed. So the lot contains certain areas, 4+ areas protected by MGL Chapter 131 under the Wetland Protection Act. Therefore, no person shall remove, fill, dredge, or alter any bank, river, drive, fresh water. You know, all the areas that are listed. I think the question is whether this falls out. This was, I think this was supposed to be the area that falls outside of the limit of work.
Correct.
Right. So this is supposed to cover the rest of the property.
Yes.
It's not in the limit of work. So I think just finding if that is clear on this, that's what we would like to do.
Okay. Planning department, is anybody concerned about the fact that 1B is not on our agenda for today?
We do have one member of the public raising their hand.
Okay, we'll hold that question. All right, who do we got?
It looks like Joyce. Joyce, can you unmute yourself? Definitely. Joyce, you're muted.
We can't hear you. You are currently muted.
Mistake, never mind.
Oh, okay, thank you. on the agenda, I don't want to get in trouble by showing something that's down on our agenda. That's why. I think it's all part and parcel of the same thing, but if we think we're good.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I believe that it's within the same condition, all condition number one, but I think it's reasonable for someone who looking at the agenda that condition number one was going to get discussed.
Yep.
I think the applicant was just hoping to clarify all three this meeting.
Okay, so what if we vote on A and C right now, and then like continue it until we're done with the next application? Is that what?
Excuse me, we may have,
Oh,
I can pull them on.
you're gonna put them on speakerphone?
Hold on a second.
right?
I got you on speakerphone with the board, okay?
All right, maybe put them near the microphone and kind of.
All right, do you mind just giving us a synopsis of the vernal pool or lack thereof on the property?
Sorry, can you repeat that? My phone just switched over.
No problem. So we just want your synopsis on the vernal pool or lack thereof on the property.
So, we did the original deadline.
I'm gonna stop and suggest that you point to us and volume up and tell them to restart.
Yeah, actually, maybe if we just put the phone on the microphone there.
Ryan, hold on a second. Can you start that over, please?
Standing water.
So you're saying you have to certify that it is a vernal pool, but you don't have to certify that it's not.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Hi, so this is one of the planning board members. We don't know who you are. Can you tell us about your name and certification?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I think we should try to restate what you said before you go. Because
Okay.
no one-
Yeah. So, and Ryan, maybe you can confirm what I'm going to say here. So, from what Ryan said, the process for National Heritage for certifying a vernal pool is that you have to certify in the application that there is one and submit the photos and supporting documentation. You don't see any of that, and it's not even a system where you could really submit a certification that they would reject or deny, so you can't even get a denial from National Heritage. Is that right?
That's cool.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, so based on that, any other questions from planning board members? Any questions from the public, either in the room or online? All right,
Is the
so,
intent that we're gonna motion to hold it before we get it?
so I think we have three different votes here. I think one is that the substitution of the amendment of the condo trust is a minor modification under A, and then we approve this form. The second one. Yeah, I think that, does that satisfy you on number 1A if we say this is a minor modification to change the form of estimate or to leave the form as written?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that one first.
Okay. Yes, I should say so moved.
So moved.
Okay. All right, voting to approve this as a minor modification and to form under 1A. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstaining, okay.
Can I stop and just make sure, because I said so moved, did you all capture the gist of that so that it?
Yes. Yeah, we got that. All right.
We will rewatch the recording to get the motion correct.
Yeah, and then so for B, we're just approving their certification that there is no vernal pool on site.
All right, I motion there is no vernal pool on site for, separate crossing.
Yeah. All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstaining, okay. And finally, we are approving the declaration of restrictions under condition 1C.
Motion to approve declaration of restrictions and covenants under 1C first step.
All in favor? Aye. All right, excellent.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Good evening.
All right. And now we will move on to our public hearing for Nicholas Villoux to get a special permit for 150 North Hampton Street. Someone here to speak to that?
Hi, thank you for having us.
Sure.
My name is Jody Duluth, and this is my son Nicholas Duluth. The plan is to carry on the Tasty Top tradition at the address that you mentioned, 115 Northampton Street, which is down the street from the original location. We will be serving the soft serve ice cream, potentially popcorn, electric popcorn machine, hot steamer, chocolate, hot chocolate or hot cider in late September or sometime then. It will be takeout only, so no customers inside the building. The hours probably will be noon to 10 p.m. depending on weather, and 1 to 3 people working, mostly Nicholas. No major changes to the outside of the building, just a sign if or banner of some sort, just to let people know where we are. We're going to have Jersey barriers set up, so it'll be safe for the customers to walk up to the 3 existing windows that will be for the takeout windows. Ropes and barrier signage and stuff, so people will know where to park safely. We know that this is our first step to start up. And dealing with the building department as well as the health department.
Great, and so, sorry, David. So just to clarify one thing here, so this is sort of a temporary plan, right? The idea is they kind of try this summer or this summer or next summer that we're looking at?
Well, we're leasing that portion of the building.
Yeah.
And so this summer is definitely for the lease option to buy at the end of the season.
Yeah. And so I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the idea here is this is kind of a temporary special permit, almost like what we did with Captain Jack's truck. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah, and I think what in our discussions, we talked about under the temporary idea for soft serve, which I think while we're here, we would probably want to ask the board about going next summer.
Yep.
But other than the temporary, operation through the window and with minimal site improvements. And then at any point, if they were to purchase the property or make significant changes to add interior seating, then it would just be a new special permit.
They come back.
Right.
Does that make sense to you
Yeah,
folks?
exactly.
Okay. Sorry, James.
No, we're on the same thing. Probably just better talk. So it's temporary. You just suggested that it may continue again, and I read that there's an option to buy. So at the point at which it might become permanent, that would trigger a real special permit process. Is that correct? Unless it fit the need and it was
This one's real.
Yeah, fair enough. And again, a permit, that's a better phrasing. Is that correct, Jeff? Is that how you see it? Unless it was by right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. And I think if after this season, there's success and the applicant goes next summer and there's still success, then yes, I think after, like, we're going for a third summer of the same, we should probably send you back anyway, just to make it permanent. But I think the expectation would be that there would be an evolution of the operation more than just the windows and the interior. So like the idea is that staff inside customers only outside. We should, yeah.
Is there a trigger for us, like a duration?
I think it'll be both, so
Yeah.
either be the end of next summer, or if they, before they decide they want to make changes. So like, I think we would approve this plan, like with this,
Yeah.
you know, and then, so if this changes, then they can come back before they do that. Or at the end of next summer, if they just say we want to keep doing it as is, they would come back. So I think the idea is we're kind of looking at this, like we do with Captain Jack's, where it's like, all right, for a summer or two, this looks good. We may have to think about other things because there's more long. At least that's, I think, sort of.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, right?
Okay, that makes sense.
So I think there could be a date. And actually Eli drafted the decision and it is in front of you. We have to time this right, but maybe this says that the special permit is not transferable and will expire at the end of the day. It says May 17th, but maybe through discussion it will be October 31st,
Right.
2024, which would allow them to
Yeah, so
operate next
in
season.
their application, they want till November 1st of this year, right? But so that might, maybe it's November 2023, summer. That is right.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. I got my ears wrong. Sorry. Which way 3?
Yeah.
What is this exactly? I was wondering, more chemistry, what building is that? And it's really good model.
Yeah, it's like, it's right across from, like, Liberty Corner.
It's a carpet. It's labeled as carpet. Right at the,
Yeah,
this
it's
is,
labeled as people.
this is the little park at Forest Road.
Got it. What about these efforts by roll?
Yeah.
All right. Helps with that. So, just some basic questions here. I saw that you're doing ropes and barriers for parking. About how many spots do you anticipate will be?
10 or 12, I'd say.
You said 1 to 3 staff. How much, in your experience, what do you been running it? You or you taking it?
I did run it last year. So last summer, that was me. And I've had like experience with them up here. They own a bar.
Great. So, in your experience, about what was the worst kind of traffic experience, or just an average sense of like how many customers have come?
Traffic, like, what way, like,
Not parking, getting overwhelmed, like how many people are you dealing with in a worst case scenario, and about what average traffic you got customer wise?
you know, honestly, probably never more than 15 in front of the window. You know, they stand at the open window and then they go and they pick up their ice cream at the second window and then usually on their way. But yeah, I mean, it's not too overwhelming. I think it never really stacks up too long because, especially at the new place, like on the base top, we didn't really have, there wasn't anything kind of angle them in a certain way. So us usually going outside a lot, guys trying like go to the line a little, so we're just get a little further away from the street. But yeah, I mean, there's, it's not, I don't think there's much traffic.
So, of people was kind of the worst. I remember the old place you talked, there were 15 tables in the back, and you've indicated, I think, 6 15 tables here. So it's still the intent that people will be able to stop and enjoy and eat and then drive off.
Yeah, so I don't have to get in a car, standing next to the car.
You know how many spots you had at the old location of the park?
For I'm sure because the kind of connected was the golfing range, so I know they had their old line, a lot of our customers also parked there, but around the building, there's probably 6 spots, just the parking, correctly.
So with regard to your business, this is an improvement of the enforcement, for sure.
And are the spots at this new site, are they painted right now, or are you gonna do something to mark them, rope or signs, or?
In the diagram where there's that white sand,
Yeah,
there are painted spots.
there are lines on there already. Okay, great.
Are they dark and having a, but I mean, I went by there and it just seemed like they weren't.
Yeah, if that's a better, way that, like, us to do that, we can, you know,
I think to the extent you can make them fairly marked, it's always better, especially in an open lot like this, where
Yeah.
there is like a curve that's sort of those spots in the back are really kind of in the middle of that space, right? So that might be a good thing to do. And then on the diagram, it looks like staff parking is going to be behind the building, is that right? Or we're on the side, the other side?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're too restricted over there, but yeah, that's what I was hoping, just to get more customer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I just had a few questions on the site diagram. The dumpster location could that be moved? The reason I asked, I think it would maybe work better to the east of where you have that staff parking label, that little notch out. There's a little stockade fence in there, and it's kind of a little kitty corner. But if the dumpster was there, I know there's an established dirt road that wraps around the building, and that would allow your staff parking to be connected to your main parking. And you could, with only 3 potential staff, that's a huge part of your lot that's being unused. Perhaps you could put signage up for overflow to allow, if there are cases that you're not expecting, maybe a big town event, a local softball tournament, who knows, where you might get more staff at this location than the previous, you would easily be able to accommodate double your 10 and 12 parking with a simple move of that dumpster. And then I was just curious, in between your 2 locations for your picnic tables, there's kind of a no man's land in there. Basically, it would be on the back side of your calling for the barriers and planters, and then there's just a dimension to the lot, 190.20. That space in there, whether it's going to be for more picnic tables, I would just like more delineation so that people aren't going to try to drive in there, and it seems like it would be more of a pedestrian area between the tables as well. So just, maybe just like clarity on that it's undrivable or would not be, somebody might get confused and drive back there or try to park back there. So just maybe more delineation for the areas for parking and auto use and the pedestrian and outdoor dining. Whether that's jersey barriers, concrete blocks, planters, Or even maybe just running some rope on there, right? Like with like the big column, freestanding columns, like I don't think they're doing it, but that's a good idea because it looks like something where someone's going to try to drive eventually.
Sure.
So those are only my comments. Maybe just more efficiency of the site itself for your operations, parking, diners, little tweak.
Okay.
There's a green star on this map I have. A green star. So there's no vegetation on that side at all. No bushes, green right now. See anything indicated? Nothing.
Right.
Just on the dumpster, and I'm not trying to speak for the applicant. I do know that the property owner actually had hoped to put the dumpster in that location to do Member Hartley was suggesting. I think the owner has had, if you notice that there was a window damage on this building for quite a long time. So the owner, I met with the owner at some point along the way, and he has expressed a lot of concerns with people using this as a turnaround. For various reasons, people turn into here. So he had actually requested us, we assisted the applicant in kind of plotting out the plan a little bit. And he actually wanted the dumpster in that location to prevent people from circling the building, to confine that usable space to the left side of the site. So ironically, it's the opposite of what you were seeing is to restrict people from going around the building.
I see both sides, but I definitely saw apartments view on that. That was my first instinct, and I also thought about it from the back to the apartments.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, the site is very open. It's not constrained. But so, and then the sign discussion was just, I think you had said like similar to what Captain Jack had set up at the front was the sign being at the road, and I think Eli and I looking at this, making sure that there was an entrance sign there to better direct people to this side rather than the other side. So I think the owner has, retained the majority of the building on the other side. So there's 3 bays on the other side. So I think there, if I'm not mistaken, the lease is not for the entire building at this point. So that's kind of why I think the owner had pushed a little bit to the left side of the site for this. If they're easily to use or plan for the other part of the building, we have to come to a big word as well. But I think that was just trying to relay some of the information that I heard.
Have we done a parking analysis for what this, it's a small space, so I'm sure it's not for 12 spots, but
We looked at, it doesn't fit.
it doesn't really fit easily in any of them.
It's because it's really set is the parking demand that we can calculate, and then drive up. Doesn't really have a big number, but it creates a still based on computer square footage or anything in the end. At this level, we certainly didn't ask for that, or I personally didn't look at that. The note that we added that we was hoping would satisfy some of this was that the layout may change based on demand. So because the barriers, are portable, there is a lot more site available for parking than kind of what's showed. I think with the exception of creating a sort of pedestrian walkway in the back, but the site actually
Could accommodate a lot more
than the heavily
Scale off that, like, in the photo, like, scale it off.
Yeah.
I get about 50.
Yeah, I think that's easy. I think this is one of the things that is why we're looking at it as more temporary, that I think, I've been going to the old Tasty Shop for years, and I can imagine there ever been cars that were there for ice cream. And staff parking are not even part of what's in front. God, I would love it to cut that problem where you there were parked 25 cars, but I don't think that's the scale that it's going to be at. But if it is, then they'll either have to come back and make adjustments to the site, and they look at that, or years if it's 30 days worth of problem, I think we'll have a chance to get them back in front of us.
And I think it's really fair to note too that the nature of the business is a pretty fast activity.
Right.
An ice cream or some of the other products you're describing are not something that usually take a long time. So I think that's probably worth noting.
It's almost more like the Starbucks, right? Where like the on-site parking is almost never used. Like you're not quite even getting in your car to move it there, but like minutes and then are gone. So I think that probably, I think it seems good for like in this context. At least that's my thought, but it's definitely one of the sort of gray areas that we go for.
I mean, the security of the temporary. It's not like it's going to be a bigger word back. There's problems with it put together.
And the parking stuff largely does end up being a bigger problem for them than for anyone off-site. It's not a situation where there's safety issues on the street. So I think that they'll be the first ones to come back and say, we want to have third row spots, or we thought the landlord to open the back line, building parking or whatever.
Is there lighting currently in the parking lot?
There is lighting in the building.
And what about the actual sort of trash you guys do generate? Oh, it just makes it into the dumpster and that's pretty much it? Yeah. Nothing unique or? All of the other end, like get deliveries, you mostly just bring stuff in your car and get stuff delivered on site.
Picked up a lot through the car last year, towards that. And we're getting deliveries, but like really early, and not that much. Sometimes the person bringing and the bar is on the back of the truck, like a commercial.
Yeah, and as long as it's before noon, and presumably this parking lot will be kind of a lot. Okay.
The Bond Construction Company, is that connected to this building? No? Okay.
The one case where snow removal doesn't.
Yeah, right.
It's all like it's pretty.
I know they're not real. Any other questions from the planning board member? Anything else from the planning department? Anybody in the room? Comments, questions? Anybody online? Raise your Oh, we can, sure. We can. Wave, turn off your camera. Okay, I don't see anything. We do have a draft decision here that well, I'll run through our criteria for approval first. Stop me if you think we need to talk about anything else, planning board members. So first is the performance of the provision of the ordinance, so we Easthampton, the general laws. Second, protection of city amenities and abutting properties that the city can issue. Minimization of traffic safety, particular ancestral movement, we talked about that. Methods of disposal of sewage and refuse, we talked about dumpster location, protection of wetlands is an issue, impact on the city's resources, that's an issue, oxygen floating on motor vehicles, we talked about that. Integrating the development and use of landscape is not an issue. No removal of vegetation, development, buildings, not an issue. Investigation of subsurface groundwater, that's my comment. So I think they've covered all of that. The conditions the planning department put together is first, if the applicant chooses subsequent years to add any expansion of use to the remainder of the building, shall, with the exception of staff space or bathroom, a new special permit shall be required to evaluate new site requirements. Two, special permits non-transferable will expire at the end of the day on May 17, 2024, but I think it said November 1st, 2023. Any changes to significant alter general operations, changes to the interior floor plan, or changes that may significantly alter the nature of constitutional management shall be presented to the planning board at a public meeting. The purpose of the public meeting shall be the planning board to determine significant enough to require modification of special permit that there's no public hearing. Special permit associated with use of motivate involvement with local and state permits, allowing operation for up to services out of projects instead of the health of the building department for that stuff. The special permit allows for hours of operation from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. from May 1st to October 31st. And all signs will comply with section of the building ordinance, A-frame signs, temporary signs from adjacent property will not be operated as part of the subject property. Do you folks have any issues with any of those conditions? Okay.
I know I want to speak along, but I didn't really ask about the signage. What's that kind of one?
Still under discussion. I think the old takes time, the employees. Took it. They gave it to them.
So we need a new sign.
Yeah.
And so any new sign will have to comply with sign orders and probably go. Unless planning department can cover all our bases. All right.
There was a modification in regard to the date,
November 1st, 2023.
I motion to approve the special permit for a drive-in or drive-through restaurant for Nicholas Wu, the aforementioned. What's that?
All in favor of the special permit? Aye. Opposed? Anything? All right. Excellent. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Get one excited. All right, and the final item on the agenda, I am recusing myself from, so I will turn this over the virtual gavel to Mr. Jarvis.
Thank you, Jesse. Well, let me give Jesse just a moment. Yeah, let's go. Okay, everyone. Give Jesse a moment. All right, we're here today for the continuation of the special permit for Ed versus Women 2017 special permit under section 12.7. We've had several meetings in this regard, and now we're down to just one special permit, having eliminated the other one in the past. I just want to take a moment before I start to get into this to define to everyone, really those who are at home, those who are sitting here, the general process. We're going to, as always, ask the applicant to present what changes they have for us and discuss it. We may have a little back and forth with the board. I'll then open it up to the public. It's my understanding from reading the documentation here that we might have Mr. Name here. One second. Mr. I'm not seeing it for cross spectrum. Name of gentleman. What's your name, sir?
Herbert Singleton.
Mr. Singleton, and as I read this, there may be some questions specifically regarding the sound. So I may alter the way I normally do public speak just a little bit, or as I normally give people a little bit of time to kind of go one at a time. And it really is directed to the board. I think there might be some questions specifically because you indicated you wanted to make yourself available to sound. So I might allow a little bit more flexibility so that people can direct their questions to Mr. Singleton. But I'm not going to let that get out of hand too much. So, I want you to be able to communicate and come back and forth. So that might be a little looser than normal, so that the public has that option. So I should mention one more thing too. Before we begin, Mr. Lane, I know that some of this information we presented the deadline for its delivery. I'm sure you're going to talk about that. But we did get a lot of the information here, but it didn't necessarily have everything time. I'm sure if the board has had a chance to review all of it or not. So I think because of that, and there's no blame or anything, I'm trying to state that I think it's probably likely that in order to give the public a chance to review the documents for them to be posted online in a timely fashion, we'll have to.
I'll take all the blame.
I just don't mean to place it. And so without further ado, tell us what's new.
Thank you very much. Let me just address that last point, and I don't mind. I don't have any private concerns about this. I lost the month of April to COVID. I'm fine, but I'm glad that I asked for 60 days because I lost about 30.
Sorry to hear that, sir. Glad you're okay.
Thank you very much. But for the last 2 weeks, I have worked vigorously with 3 different experts to try to get everything together and finish line on as close to the time as possible. Thank you for your patience. I understand that means that we may not have final decisions, but the big changes are, as I indicated in my narrative, submitted on that Birch Family Farm, the owner of the adjacent property, did feed over what we refer to as parcel 1B, which was subject of the A&R at the last hearing. Feeded that over to a new entity called Sliver LLC, which is fully owned and operated by 7. So all of the land that is the subject of this application is now land owned by 1776. So to that end, kind of starting with, I think, simplest to most complicated, there is now the gravel expanded parking area shown on the plan, which also has a light plan, which I apologize for this. That was submitted late this afternoon, and I doubt most of you have had a chance to take a look at it.
I have not seen that.
But at the last minute, we ended up going in a slightly different direction. We hired Jeff Squire at Berkshire Design to produce, at the moment, a pretty simple plan that should comply with 1275G, in that it is showing light, illuminating the parking area, and how it will also eliminate glare onto neighboring property, mostly because it's not terribly close to any neighboring property.
This will likely have to continue while we save that part for when we have the material.
Otherwise, the bigger areas that you were looking for more detail on was patio expansion, including the stage design. In particular, patio expansion, the questions that I had in my notes from the board were related to egress onto and off of the patio. So the existing patio has egress in and out of the building by the door from the building onto the patio. There will be an expanded patio, further gated egress between the existing patio and the expanded patio. And then there'll be a third egress out of the expanded patio if the parking area if necessary, also gated, and that's over in the corner near the building valve.
Sure, I'll ask at this point, do we have an event for any of these that we could put up to show the public what he's talking about?
Oh, yes, we do actually. Sorry.
Give me a chance. I forwarded to the email that computer is logged into. If you want to present one.
Which document?
Anything that's going to help him sort of visually describe what he's referring to.
Well, I could read it as another story. Okay. So,
I would ask that you just skip back a little and re-summarize that.
So let me go back to then talking about the patio expansion. First, just the basics of it. This is the existing patio here near the silos. So there's egress on and off of this patio through the building. At the moment, there's other egress here at the corner. So this will, and this is noted on the plans. Ms. Holberg actually drops a footnote there.
And for the public, we're making technical modifications. Exactly.
Are we there or are we still?
No, I don't.
If we're not able to do it, I'll skip forward. I don't want to hold us up too long. I just wanted people to.
I see, we're seeing this here in the room, but the folks online are not seeing it.
All right.
Gotcha, Robin.
I think it's fine. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, it's all set now. People should be saying it. Yeah. Okay.
Great. Excellent. Well done. Thank you.
So on the plans, the patio, existing patio is here. I'm circling with the cursor. And over here, you'll see that Ms. Holberg did drop footnote number 5 to explain rest on and off of existing extended. So over here at this corner, there is existing doorway from the building up to the patio. Customers enter the patio through the building. At the moment, there can be egress off of the existing patio. This corner, this will be gated egress onto expanded patio, and then another gated egress over here at the on the expanded patio near the loading bay. Over here to the left is where there will be new plantings. I believe the intention is planting arborvitaes, which will run the length of the proposed expanded patio and then go behind this area, which is where there will be the stage. The stage, my client is not engaged an architect yet, but we will go into more detail in a bit when we discuss sound mitigation. There's a general plan for a 16 by 20 foot stage with 10-foot high walls with a shed roof on it. Everything on the stage is oriented so that the music performers will be facing, sound monitors will all be facing towards the building, and then the side of the building will be draped in sound dampening material, all of which will be done according to recommendations by our expert, Herb Singleton of DSA. Who can answer more questions in a second. But just in terms of the general layout, that I think was, those were the areas that, as far as I could tell from my notes, that the board was wanting to be addressed in terms of expansion of the patio.
It was indeed. Do you want to continue or?
Yeah, sure.
At the board.
Yes.
I do have a question. So it looks like from the plan I'm looking at online, I think it's the same one here. There appears to be a wall around the existing patio, and I think one of our questions was the stage is kind of nestled between a proposed planting area and a wall of the existing patio. So is the plan that the existing patio wall is removed at the stage, and then is the remainder of the wall remaining? Because I see a dash line which I believe represents the wall around the patio, or complete elevated. Right, maybe it's elevated above the wall. I'm a bit confused about. But I think that was the confusion we had. Is like where, if they're facing the silos, is that wall removed from the patio and it's just at the stage area, or for the whole distance along that?
Sure. Just give me 1 second. I actually do want to consult with my client because my own memory visually of that area. Let me just, if I could have 1 second. Eric, could I? Eric?
How you guys doing? Hey, Eric.
Good to see you, too.
Okay, so quite simply, yes, stage will be elevated, so that I would imagine performers would be
Above the wall. Yeah, I've never been there, so I don't know the height of that wall.
I just, from my own memory, I've been there several times, I just couldn't remember.
Okay.
There.
Okay, and in the back of the stage will have a wall.
The back stage will have a wall, and then the row of arborvitae behind that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else on the board have any questions about that part, the design question? Okay.
Yeah, just wanting to kind of run through what I would assume are some of the unremarkable things here. Gary Swanson, the engineer, did submit his own narrative with new water pumps that are specific only to this land that is owned by 1776. Of most note, I think, is that there is now going to be, there's going to be, I was trying to put it in the computer.
That email will have all the attachments that you sent.
Just that there will be a drainage basin here to the, I don't know, looking at these plans, to the right of the expanded parking lane.
Yep.
Mr. Swanson's not here at the moment. I don't know if the board is going to have any questions about this one itself.
I'll take a moment. Again, some of these materials came in late, not as late as late, but has anyone on the board not had a chance to look at Mr. Swanson?
I didn't know. I looked at all of the materials. Again, I don't know when. I had.
Okay. All right. So let's just take a look at what we've got here and kind of go through it, if that's okay, and just see if anything triggers here. I can. There's a full 3 pages here. I don't think it's worth it. You know, you should read it, but I want to take a moment to and have everyone just kind of take a look, because if there's an issue and we get to the next meeting, we think all we've got to do is light and maybe touch on this. I'd like to try and keep that isolated, but it's not fair. But let's take a moment. Yeah, reading. Did you?
No, but I can tell Mr. Swanson, I talked a lot the first few meetings, and just based on the eyeball account, and that pond that we had before was very well
I'm hoping that I can at least get us to peruse what's there. We can at the very least try to call out anything that might be a problem, so it can be prepped for next meeting. But honestly, we haven't had enough chance to delay it, so what's next? Read it.
Right, Mr. Swanson does describe the new drainage basin. We have revised sewer removal plans. Before I go there, one other thing on water. I believe it was mentioned in the, described it on the plans, and Mr. Swanson described it in his narrative as well. Over here on the western side of the parking area, there is a drainage swale. I guess it's currently, or it was noted to have been partially covered. And we're just proposing that annual maintenance will involve regular clear of debris. As Mr. Swanson describes and as Ms. Holmer described on the plan.
I mean, like, have types of agreement online.
I don't do having version on the
I went through it.
done that way. All right, that's good news.
Great. Let's go on into snow removal. Also, I think fairly unremarkable, it was just suggested at the last meeting that there'll just be some redistribution or proposed redistribution of snow removal, which there's a separate set of plans.
I saw on the one I had that you had basically the 4 primary zones. Yes, yeah, there you go.
So, and we just, the new proposal is just to have, I think we removed 200 cubic yards of snow from this corner, added 200 to this corner, and everything else I believe remains the same. So there'll be 1, 2, 3, 4 snow removal mounds that are also further described in this response.
That's very fine.
There was, this is going back to the January meeting, there were several questions about special events, but I think also we were presenting a different set of plans in January that no longer apply. So to just simplify, the brewery holds 2 special events a year, Barbs and Brews, and a half marathon fundraiser, by one of the athletics programs. So for each event, the parking contingency involves directing overflow park here on the grass along Fort Hill Road, which has been done previous years. As far as we know, haven't really been issues or complaints, but not on a comprehensive study of past complaints at this moment. But as far as I know, that really hasn't been an issue. As I said, overflow would just be directed to park here on the grass on the Birch Family Farm property. As I explained in my narrative, Birch Family Farm, all of this is really owned by the Barron's family, and all of this is done with permission of the actual owners of the land. Personnel from the brewery would be on hand to direct overflow to park here, also on hand to direct the flow of traffic in and out of existing parking lots.
So in the fenced-in area, is that what I'm understanding? With fenced-in, existing fenced area would be the overflow parking?
No, just along the grass.
Oh, yeah, legendary.
Along the road.
Yeah.
And your last sentence, for me, it's a really important one. That was the big question we had, was would there be another outlet for the traffic? And you're saying no, the existing driveway is the only in and out for all the traffic.
Existing driveways in and out for all of the traffic, except for overflow, which would just be directed to.
But overflow will come in for you.
No, overflow would be directed to park, to not come in and just park on
So they'll come in over the grass.
Yes. Unless I am misunderstanding. Might need a second to consult with my client.
I think we should.
Why don't you come on over here?
This is fairly basic, folks.
Just come over here and
We've
chat.
done this for 5 years.
Eric, could you just come over here and chat with me?
Parking just along the road. That's it.
Yeah, there's typically, I was at the marathon, it was the work y'all leave the call. The road's kind of shut from that down, that was blocked off with cones, there's offices. There's more positioned at the bike path intersection. Traffic seemed to work really well this year. And personally, I didn't see.
Did you have one?
Yeah, that's all. Just to clarify, that's all we're talking about is this special events parking coming directly off road onto the grass right there, as it's been done in years past.
And roughly how many special events a year?
2 special events.
Anyone have a special event?
All right. I believe that leaves us with that.
Before we go to seven, can I ask something? Just the expanded gravel area. I think it's more solidified what's being proposed now. And I just wanted to ask, I guess, is there a way to determine either the size of the expanded area or the number of parking spaces that are kind of, I was counting out, it looked like the 2 center rows. So it's on the page right, the center rows, I counted 25 on each side. And if you extrapolate, there'd be 25 on the bottom and 25 on the top. So we're talking about 100 parking spaces. I just want to, because I think moving forward, one of the things that wasn't clear in the last permit was what is the parking area and where, like, so when we permit this, we just want to, or if it's just going to be gravel unmarked, we just want to figure out like the geographic area, how far will this go? And then that'll be what you're permitted for. And then if there's future changes after that, that's what was a little bit unclear in the last one, which is where was the permitted stuff and where did it start to expand? So
When you say permitted area, you mean acreages?
I mean, that's how it's mapped out here is 0.66 acres, but just to get a sense of what we're talking about, it looks like it's about 100 spaces in that area. That's fine. We just want to be clear what the number is moving forward.
Sure, and I actually, I don't think there's been any change to this, and it was spelled out in
Your previous
the
narrative.
January narrative, where we counted the spaces or counted how many cars could fit in that space based on.
So that's fine. I think we have time to, when we move to the next meeting and there's condition or site plan, just address all that. And I just would note for the record, because it came up before, is this site plan that's on the screen that showed more storage units going across the bottom of the page. One of the questions I think we should just grapple with between now and the hearing is, are we talking about double stacked or just a single stack of them? And I think that were the questions that came up. Just in terms of what are we expecting to see in the future. But I do want to be clear, I think that this does show an expansion of the existing route.
Okay.
Public for pausing for a moment. Let the attorney in his client.
Well, it's gonna build a ramp. Often double stack, but a little bit more, I think I'm gonna hold off on building the ramp. And, yes, we just have 2 double storage. Here.
Okay, what double stack thing?
The 2 double stack containers are gonna probably be the ones that. But, but I appreciate the level of scrutiny.
Okay, so
Yeah, after consultation with my client, we can say that, so as I understand, there exists 2 double stack containers, which will stay that way. Otherwise, the rest of it will simply be single stack. Container stacked on top of the timbers underneath.
are you looking for sort of, I mean, is that enough to put in? Or are you looking for sort of an estimate of a number?
No, as long as the board understands that there'll be more and they have extended run, that's fine. And I just wanted clarity on what to expect to see out there. So, clear from the last permit. Clear.
I'd like to take a moment to see if anyone on the board has any concerns about the stacks and the extra space. I'm okay with it personally, and it's something we've discussed at length in the past.
Industrial zone. Right.
Oh, but any other questions, Sean?
So, as we noted earlier, the 1776 engaged cross-spectrum acoustics to conduct really modeling and then make written recommendations for how best to mitigate noise from outdoor music. And Prospect Acoustics President, Herb Singleton's actually with us this evening. He's the one who did the modeling and made these recommendations. And he's indicated that the stage, as proposed, being 16 by 20 and then 10-foot high walls on three sides to the shed roof, combined with the reorientation of performers and sound monitors towards the brewery itself, with that area of the brewery trait in sound dampening material, should result in a noise reduction. We project about 75% as perceived by residents on Flash, which has been the focus of the complaints. And understandable considering the way sound may have previously been oriented, which goes out across the parking lot away from roofing, which probably carry better on the air across the meadow. So, like I said, at this point, 1776 is not hired an engineer, is not hired an architect to design plans. We're waiting to see that this proposal would be approved by the board. I would leave it to Mr. Singleton. Really, if the board has specific questions for Mr. Singleton to answer any specific technical questions about this, but the general idea is that if this plan is approved, the stage would be built, and then we would engage in guided demonstration that Mr. Singleton has given us the guide for, which would really involve either having a live performance or having sound monitors in the stage being played at a level that we would expect it to be at during live performance, and then someone, me or someone else, being down on Clap Street, coordinating with residents of Clap Street who've been feeling affected by this, and just measuring the sound as we're hearing it down there, and then making adjustments back at the brewery.
My guess is that, given that there's no specific plan for it, what we would do is to condition in that the sound mitigation recommendations should be discussed and agree with them, would be implemented. It'd be our expectation that it'd be implemented, and that a test would be run, right. And then there's going to be some sort of benchmark test, some sort of 6 month or first event of the year or something like that, time period where we're going to want to check in, right, to see how that. Just that why I.
Yeah, no, and that's, I think, exactly what we expected.
Do you prefer to, but you might not be done, I'm sorry.
I think I am done. What I expected was that there would be very specific questions, which is why we asked Mr. Singleton to be present this evening.
Sure. Mr. Singleton, do you want to do a presentation or respond to questions?
I was expecting I would just be responding to questions, but in more detail about something in the report, I can do that.
What I'd like to do is actually start with some questions from Mr. Singleton myself.
Yeah,
is
just
that-
the podium.
Yeah,
Do a full
so what-
introduction.
Yeah, if we're done with presenting plans, I'd like to remove that.
Yeah. So, let me just really start with formally establishing Mr. Singleton's credentials. And, if you could just kind of give the board, your background in terms of.
Sure. So again, my name is Herbert Singleton. I am the president and co-founder of Easthampton Acoustics, based in Easthampton Meadow, part of the headquarters of Easthampton Meadow. In terms of background, I have a degree in mechanical engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I am a licensed professional engineer in Massachusetts and in 3 other states. I am also board certified in noise control by the Institute of Noise Control Engineering. And I've been doing this for about 27 years.
So I would at this point just turn it over to you all if you have questions.
Just a quick question. Have you encountered a problem like this before and have been successfully resolved?
That would have been my next question.
That is a very timely question. So, okay, I can't get into detail, but I'm actually working on a very similar project. I'm looking for the town where they are undergoing a similar dispute with a bar with live music. And the bar has actually built a similar structure to this, and we did testing for that structure this past last Thursday. I have not been given permission to release the results, but I have been given permission by the town attorney to discuss it in general terms. And in general terms, I will say that based on my experience with those tests, I am highly optimistic that the recommendations will work.
Thank you.
That's really good to know. I have a few, but I want to open it up to the board. If I understood correctly here, you described the test conditions a little bit, and I think it was for some people, you would sort of set up a bar test of music that is in the current conditions, and then a test of the volume down, I think it was 20 decibels or something like that.
So, yeah, so the specific thing that I was trying to address, and, I think that this was Eric and Attorney Lane's idea, was, there's the proposal for this barrier and this shed roof structure. And, how do, and we can go ahead and make modeling calculations about how well it's all going to work. But, how does that, how would somebody perceive that? Somebody would have put an idea of what that's really like. So what I listed in my memo is basically a demonstration that, you can do right now without any structure. You basically bring a set of speakers out there, you play music at a certain, at the existing comfortable stage level. Somebody over on Class 3 can listen to it and say, this is the existing condition now. And then somebody back over at people who read just basically turns down the volume knob until you reach a 20 decibel reduction. And you can measure that using a cell phone app or something or whatever. And then that will be representative of the future conditions. So it's just a way of being able to simulate what the future shed would do compared to existing conditions.
You provided a map, which was a really great visual reference of the reduction. You can see that in the current conditions, it was obviously covering the ranges all the way down to Flat Street.
Right.
And in your map, it wasn't. In the secondary condition where the shed was in place, it was no longer doing so.
Right.
And then you had an indication for, Flat Street was the focus clearly, but you spoke to the other homes that are on Fort Hill, which are a lesser reduction because they're sort of in the direction. And I think you said it was merely to turn the volume on your TV down one notch to get an indication.
Just to be clear, so what we're actually doing is we're turning the speakers. The speakers right now are facing to the northwest, to the west side of the map that Attorney Lane had for. So we're actually turning them in the opposite direction now. So before they were pointing towards Class 3 and away from Fort Hill.
Now they're actually turning away from Pratt Street and toward Front Hill. So there's actually going to be a slight increase in noise levels just by the act at Fort Hill Road, just by the act of turning the speakers towards it. So yes, the building that's there now, the brewery building, lost most of that, but there's going to be, just in full disclosure, there's going to be a slight increase of about 1 decibel. And that's about, on most TVs, you can take your remote control and just tap the button control once. That's, on most TVs, that's about 1 decibel.
That's good to know. Do you have a recommendation for anything that could be done on the property to better protect those Fort Hill residents?
Short answer is not really. Short answer is basically I don't think there's anything practical that can be done aside from maybe like building a barrier on top of those buildings or something like that. I think, but I think given, I am an engineer, we do look at sort of cost benefit, and I think in terms of the engineering that would be involved in having to do a structure to get that, to negate that 1 decibel increase in terms of the practicalities in designing it and building it, it's not a good trade-off.
Very annual indication increase.
But I'm also aware too, though, that generally speaking, these events stop at 8, which, I think this is something where the events were going until, 11 o'clock or midnight or 1 a.m., when people are generally sleeping. At that point, I think it's worth taking a second thought. I think for the most part, when I look at these events, even the project I'm working on and the other brewery one, their activity is going until, 10 or 11 p.m. at night. And they're very much closer to residential neighborhood. Whereas this one is not quite a good situation. So I think from a top perspective, it's best use of funds.
Is it your expectation that you'll be present to conduct the test?
My intention is to allow it to be done without me being there.
Without you being there. So you're going to produce this, get the results, and then expect the client to do what they do.
Yeah. Essentially just, just rather than again, just trying to conserve resources and be able to give a test, being able to give a test that you can do yourself, you can do it as much, however often you want to do it.
So, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying the test is very well detailed on page 6 of it looks pretty.
So this question then is to Attorney Lane. How is it, I can see how you would follow the instructions to conduct the test. When do you plan on doing it? And are you willing for us to condition that it be done and recommend to us the best times?
Yes, we're willing to allow to have the board condition that the test be done before there be a final approval.
I think we'll approve it, condition on the test being completed, and then after a set period of time, you come back to the results. Right? Jeff, does that seem appropriate to you?
Can you say it again with what you're proposing?
No problem. So I'm saying it would seem that what we might strike for is a condition that says these tests will be performed, and after a set amount of time, our expectation is that you'll come back to us and produce those results for a review process, for the special permit to continue to be functional. Is that in essence?
Yeah, I think we're close. I think this is the closest we've been to getting to this point. I think, the planning board has to realize that you will be granting the authority for live music, right? So the way I would describe it is that then this is a little bit more how the music gets made. So that is the thing that you could still talk to the owner about it. Hopefully it solves the problem. If it didn't solve the problem, there would be still some tweaking to satisfy the issue, but the music is still permitted. Right? So I think that's what we, because we have to be careful. You're granting the special permit. Once you granted the permit, well, you could, I guess, but we're not talking about rescinding it or taking it.
No.
So everyone's
We're just making sure that the things we expected, that were told to us that the shed would be built by a spec design, that it has to be conducted, and we get the results expected are done.
Yeah.
What happens if we don't?
Well, I would just, I guess, we need to think this through, and I think we're gonna have the next meeting to, which could be in 2 weeks, to talk about how conditions shape up. I don't think we want to have the live music start until the test happen, or the test happen. And then that would come to you like right after the test start. Yeah. Because I think if I understood correctly, the shed needs to be built.
Yeah, so actually, no. So Mr. Singleton's demonstration, I may have misspoke previously. Mr. Singleton's demonstration calls for testing out his theory now before
You don't need a shed to do it. Right.
So that does seem like something that we could do relatively soon. And then, because frankly, I don't see why my client would engage in the expense of an architect before we know whether or not this whole thing's going.
But we can condition that the shed be built according to the spec.
Yes.
And we could condition that we receive the test.
I mean, I just, based on my experience in other municipalities, because this is what's going on right now at municipal hearings, noise and outdoor music. So, I mean, do you want, I'm just wondering, to just be able to laser focus and get right to it, do you want building commissioner on hand to do the demonstration or some other representative?
That was gonna be my question, like, how do we know what it's built to spec? Do we have the building commissioner go out and say, oh yeah, there's fiberglass, whatever, on the walls to mitigate to dampen the sound, and I'm witnessing this change the, the different decibels at certain distances? How do we confirm that's constructed properly?
Yeah, it's just something for the test.
So the test happens.
Well, there's a problem with the
someone
test
present.
too, because the test, I'm gonna open to the public, so the test is dependent on the public. I mean, I guess, are you just gonna put someone by the home on Clap Street, the individual who spoke of that, and have your person report the results?
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
Ms. Fisher on Clap Street has been the most vocal person here, who I believe has really been affected the greatest. All of this will be done in coordination. At least her. I've received emails and calls from a few other folks in the area. I'd be happy to coordinate
And
this test.
and I want to keep that communication going between the, but I also don't want to create a situation where either they feel unheard or one of them could potentially, and I don't think this will happen, but it has to be looked at categorically, could potentially hold up the process because they refuse to be involved in the test. I don't want either of those to happen, and so I think we need to think exactly about how that test gets implemented, how we get results. Because
What have you guys done in the past? Like, are we the first ones? Well, what did you guys do with the plastic company?
Yeah, so exactly, there was a test done, but they performed the test and came back with results.
Technically, from Mass General Law and CMR code, it's if they can prove it 10 decibels above ambient at the property line, they're within the law.
Yeah, that's exactly. So, but how do they prove that? Is the question. I mean, realistically, what happens is that when we have a report here saying that this plan is going to make that happen, and now we're kind of coming in and saying, prove it to us. But according to what happened before with the report, someone just came in and said, my expert opinion is that, and we took it as on faith. I mean, maybe the issue here is to take this on faith.
That's what you guys have done.
It's an interesting question that I think we need to look at. And I know we have a little bit more time as we come to conditions, but we have to give, we're going to need a draft to start in a process after this meeting. So the next meeting when we come here, we have a draft to adopt, and then I think some direction that we're going to go in on that. But I have to say right now, I think a test is a good idea because it will make the neighbors feel more comfortable. It'll be inclusive, but I don't know that it really conducted in a way that it really took influence on.
Yes, if I understood correctly that Mr. Singleton said he wouldn't be present for the test, but if that were up for discussion and the planning board were to attend the Clap Street area to hear it, I think that, would that be, because I think that's interesting. One thing about the board right now is you don't want to shift all of your responsibility to someone else, the building commissioner, but having you be present for the test with maybe the guidance of Mr. Singleton, because I'm kind of wondering who's going to
And the
verify that.
neighbors to be on the property.
Right, who's going to verify that the test happened according to the plan. I think that would be those would be the two questions I have is who would verify that it was done properly according to page 6 description, and then maybe the.
Yeah, I'm fine with being present. So I'm thinking about the class 6 place. We actually had them do a study and they submitted a report. Was that study prior to prior to the construction of it? And they go back and do those.
So
I am good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, doesn't this count as that though? I mean, we're being told this is what it's going to be.
this, so if I may,
Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, but,
Oh, I'm sorry. Taking the box as.
That thing.
But sure,
Okay, stop.
so I'll go Harry then Jeff, if that's okay. No, I'm pissed off. All right, sorry, I'm pissed off. Okay, Attorney Lane, we have a question.
Just out of curiosity, at what point does the fan stop dangerous painting at the noise level? I mean, you got a fan on the property, or a plant, right? How plant can you make it so the fan is not even entertaining it? And even noise
That
level.
varies by,
I don't know.
that varies by person.
I mean, we're not talking about turning down the volume at the stage, right? And the band will be playing at the same level they are now, it's just that the noise will be kept, especially will be blocked from propagating out off the property. And that's all, maybe you're confused. When I talk about turning the volume down, that's for the demonstration. That's for a way for somebody at class 3 to have a simulation of what the structure is going to do. So that's somebody who's turning, so that's, you can do that right now. We can all go out to the bar with the speaker and do it right now.
Yeah.
And stand over at Class Street, and we can say, this is what you're hearing right now. Well, in a magical 6 weeks, whenever when we build this thing, this is what's going to sound like afterwards.
So you're,
That's what the
so you're
demonstration
just mimicking the model that you used to create this document to show the neighbors what it's going to be post-construction.
Right.
And get their buy-in that this is acceptable.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Maybe good reference too, if you get one simulation with how it's set up right now, so the neighbors can see.
It's,
exactly.
That's the description.
Can see our cadence.
I get it now.
and that's why I'm saying, like, it's a very arbitrary thing, and it's something that can be done immediately. I mean, we could go and attend that just to, but I'm not sure that, I almost feel like this is the expert opinion. The expert opinion is going to be 20 decibels lower, and if you look at the map saying that it won't be in that direction anymore, they're not going to hear it at the same levels.
I do, but that's a model. And I think what we're saying is that they're offering to say, let's go to the neighbors, confirm that this model is accurate. Prove the model and get their buy-in to say, okay, or that extra decibel, we're okay with that. Like,
I think the other thing too that we mentioned earlier, that we got from is just acknowledging, is acknowledging live music being acceptable.
Yeah. Which I think we've all talked about. We know that's something that we, we're okay with.
Yeah,
that length, unless
no, but, and I think after that, after that's like tested, after everyone agrees with that, I think my concern is, okay, the stage is built, the band's playing, but it's not what the model said. We don't. Once we've issued the permit, it's permitted. So the neighbors have to come back and say, hey, that's not what we agreed to. There's not decibel.
At that point, it's the law. I think, if I remember right, we were working on noise ordinance here recently. Someone indicated to me before, but right now, it falls the state ordinance, and I saw something called the state ordinance. They respond to the thing that the neighbors are called police nights, the standard. Yeah. I apologize, Chris, but just for very, very, very patient over there.
Thanks. I guess I think it's the test. I think having the test occur with potentially the planning board present to verify that turning it down as the consultant said, but just reducing it by 20 decibels to make sure that that's going to be satisfactory. I think that's the thing that's missing right now. I think that would be the thing that the planning board could, once that test is done, the planning board could then rely on sound, the stage satisfying the concern. The case that was mentioned before, what they did was they proposed the decibel level, they conducted a test and submitted proof that the decibel level matched. And so that's the one thing that this plan by itself doesn't prove that. Not yet, it's close. I think doing the test.
So then we'll strive to, and hopefully in the next 2 weeks, get a time when the neighbors agree, you all agree, that we can go run a test. But again, there's a lot of things that have to come together to make that happen. And if we don't get it, or we delay, I mean, I don't, we'll see how the neighbors respond. I mean, realistically, this is going to affect Fort Hill by 1 decibel, and it's going to affect the neighbors that are on Flat Street, which really we're talking about one particular home. So if we can get buy-in from at least 2 of those, so that we can do this, but I think we're okay. But if we can't hold up the process, then I don't think then we can't wait for it.
And it's likely that obviously the models, I'm sure, are excellent. They generally always are. They're calibrated, so we probably will not see any change really from actual events that the model saying. So correctly. So
I agree. I trust guys for
yeah. I just want to make sure that the president understands.
So I think at this point, the appropriate thing to do is to open it up for public comment, and in addition to offering the public an opportunity in a moment to speak their mind about all issues in this project, I will ask too, if anyone that wishes to speak would be willing to address their willingness, if they're near the property, particularly on Class Street or on Fort Hill, to have us attend at some point or work with us in scheduling, allow the planning board on your property on a date that I'm guessing the planning department and the client will have to work on for what that date is. So we'll get some email exchanges to attend. And also, if you have any particular questions for Mr. Singleton, did I get it correctly, regarding sound, he'll be able to respond to that to you directly. So at this point, I open to the public. Is there anyone? Oh, sorry, Mr.
Sure, I mean, I just want to make clear that if the board would prefer pending Mr. Singleton's availability, 1776 would definitely hire him to know that.
Okay. I mean, that might help answer questions and concerns. I certainly couldn't disadvantage this scenario. So again, I'm opening it to the public at this point. Google Meets, I'm not certain of the ways that you can communicate with Google Zoom. So if you just show yourself or speak or wave, I think I see Rose.
We have someone.
Hayden.
Yeah, go ahead and mute yourself.
Okay, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I just want to comment the Zoom.
Sorry, I'll ask you to start with your name and address.
What's that?
Can we have your name and address?
Sorry. Yeah, my name is Rosanna Hayden, and I live at 19 Fort Hill Road. I just want to comment a preface that the sound quality is really poor, especially in rooms where there's, people standing or sitting and there's multiple speakers. So it's really hard to hear. And I apologize for missing the first part of the meeting, but I had a couple questions about what I was able to maybe hear. I just would like to reframe this because it's a little alarming to hear this discussion where there's one neighbor on Clapp Street that has a problem and everyone else on Fort Hill is really not affected by it. And I know people who live a half a mile away in the condos off East Street who hear it. So let's broaden out the circle of concern to beyond what you're discussing today. It's really kind of weird to hear it discussed this way. I have a couple questions and just want to say one statement, and that is that the issue is that this is industrial land that borders a residential neighborhood. And you guys are welcome to set up sound pressure level meters on our property wherever you need to. And I actually let Mr. Lane know that in an email, but I never heard back. But I would like to help out in this process and be, convivial with all the neighbors, including the brewery. But the issue is not that it's one neighbor, but that there are tricky issues. I'm totally for live music. I think it would be great, for that to happen successfully here. I don't know, there's an echo, but I would like to know what the sound specialist, I heard him say using an app. When I use a sound pressure level type of meter app on my phone, I get 80 decibels to 90 decibels on my front porch when there's a concert. I don't think that phone apps are very helpful. I think you should use a calibrated sound pressure level meter for this entire project. You know, phone apps are not going to cut it. And that's coming from somebody who has some background in audiology and acoustics. And then the other question that I had is, how does the structure address reverberation? Because that's going to be an issue if it's made out of metal or materials that will actually amplify the sound. So if you guys could talk a little bit about the structure and how it's going to address that, that would be great. And also whether there'll be use of sound pressure level meters that are calibrated on an annual basis and are certified. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Hayden. If it's okay with the public before proceeding, I'm going to allow Mr. Singleton to respond to those questions, and that will be kind of the format going forward.
Thank you. So regarding the question about calibrated equipment. So again, when I was talking about using the sound level meter app, I do agree with the commenter that when reading absolute sound levels from a phone app, they're not always accurate. What I'm talking about in terms of a demonstration was, again, to enable the town and the brewery to be able to do the demonstration without having an expert to be there. And we're using the app to look at a difference in sound level. So we're talking about, we have a setup here. We have we have an audio system, we have PA speakers, and we play the bottom level. And to simulate the reduction from the shed or from the stage, you reduce the sound level by 20 decibels. You can use a sound level meter just to look at, okay, I'm measuring 80 now, we'll turn down the volume, I'm measuring 75, 70, 55, 60, that's 20 decibels lower. Okay, so that 80 and that 60 may not be accurate, but that 20 decibel difference between them is accurate. The phone apps are good at being able to tell changes in sound level because they're not looking at the absolute sound level. So that's why I'm talking about using phone apps for the simulation. So again, just to enable the town to be able to do it without having to hire.
So you're saying, while in actuality it might be an 80, it might register as 70, but if you lower it to 50, it's still a true 20 decibel drop.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then the second question regarding reverberation. So again, our model does account for that. Basically accounting for sound waves bouncing off the inside of the structure, bouncing off the side, the inside of the stage structure, and bouncing off and reflecting off the sides of the brewery building. So and there will be some reflections off of that. So our recommendations are that the inside of the stage structure and that the northwest wall of the brewery building be covered in some sort of absorptive material. And I will give some specific recommendations to the brewery for materials that they can use to do that, so that there's no excess reverberation that can cause issues.
Okay, thank you. Now,
Thank you. I just want to say thank you. That was very helpful. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and please don't go Ms. Hayden yet.
I'm screwed who's I've lost connection on this computer.
Oh, yeah. While we're pausing, Jeff, I'd like to recommend to those that are speaking and those who have an opportunity to engage with that we give them your email and that they contact you so that if we put together this meeting, we'll know who's willing to allow us to their property. Is that okay? Can we share the planning department email in order to manage a scheduling? Is that a procedure you're willing to, that an okay way to handle this?
Yeah, I think so. So I emailed with Hayden, so I think that's fine.
Okay. So, tell me when we're good to go. We're good?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Ms. Hayden, I'm going to ask, I'm just telling you that you have his email already. If anyone doesn't, let me know, but I'm going to ask that you just email Jeff to indicate your willingness to allow us to come and be involved in the scheduling process for this festival. Does that work for you?
Yeah, I really appreciate your seeking our input, and also Mr. Lane and Eric and everybody. Appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, and since one more thing, since you indicated that there were other places, we're very open-minded to that. There's no reason, of course, for us to exclude it. Within, a general region, obviously, that we can attend in a day. I don't want to go all the way across the city for this, but if there are neighbors that you have that are, within a reasonable distance, and I'll let you arbitrarily decide what that is that you want to share this with, they can email and share Jeff's email with, they can be involved in that too. We'll put them up for a willingness to go and attend their property. I'm not saying we're going to hit every one, but at least that way we can try to get a selective sampling. So just let them know, whoever they are, and share Jeff's email so that they can contact Jeff and say, you know, our property is available for testing on whatever state.
I have a quick question. If you will be on, if you do end up on the site visit, do you have equipment that is more accurate than an app? I'm sorry, Mr. Singleton. Sorry about that. That is more accurate than a phone app?
Our firm has more equipment, whether that equipment will be available, not otherwise we use on other projects, depending on the schedule.
Okay, anything else, Ms. Hayden?
No, thanks a lot. I think the Zoom sound quality is a lot better. I don't know if that's anybody else's
I have to
experience.
agree. Yeah, we're getting the same thing. What we're hearing back from you isn't as clear as I wish it was, but I can't do anything about that right now, alas. I will, it's being reported to the planning department right now. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak from the public? Just go ahead and speak, or show your camera or whatever you've got. Anyone else that wishes to speak? I don't see anyone. Oh, here's someone. Name and address, please. I think it's Laura Fisher.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. This is Laura Fisher, 61 Clapp Street. I had to tune into the meeting a little bit late, so I will catch up on the details, but I'm happy to also participate in whatever site visits are going to be happening for planning purposes for this. I will say just anecdotally that it's been very quiet. I appreciate how peaceful it's been. I will also say just anecdotally that when certain loud concerts are happening within the brewery, we still do hear it, and it's probably similar to the other industrial noise that we hear from that area in volume. So I offer that as just, sort of the different experience we've been having without having the outdoor music happening. But again, happy to participate in the site visits.
Wonderful, thank you. And in order to do that, please do email Jeff Baggs so that he knows, with your name and address, so that he knows your willingness to be in that property for the scheduling. I'm hoping you have his email. If not, let us know.
Yep, I do. Thank you very much.
Before you go, because you said you came in a little late. There is an opportunity if you had any specific questions for the sound engineer, Mr. Singleton. I just want to make sure you were aware of that. You get any questions you want to get specific about.
I guess, and this may have been answered, but in terms of measuring the sound output, how will this be enforced going forward? I understand that you're designing with this with like sound the traveling of the noise to be reduced. But I guess I'm not understanding how, whether there's going to be a decibel meter built in anywhere.
Yeah, I can answer that. The answer is that it won't. We're either going to approve or not at the end of the day. And if the volume, I've heard it's very likely that the city is going to be working on, they haven't already, and it's been a while since I heard our own sound ordinance. But for now, my understanding is that it's defaulted to the state. And if it hits a certain decibel level, you call the police, and if they respond, that's how you respond. Once we issue the permit, we can issue it with certain conditions, but we're not in enforcement. Police are enforcement. So once it's issued, it's issued.
Yeah, I understand that. Thank you. I just didn't know if I had missed that as like a design feature, but again, I haven't had a chance to look at everything yet. Thanks.
Thank you. And then I think I saw Melissa Kneibel. I'll need you to repeat your name and address, please.
Hi, this is actually John Kneibel, 17 Fort Hill Road. I got a question for Mr. Singleton, or a concern. With the music now facing our direction, as he described it, and that the noise would be a little louder on Fort Hill, my question is, if I can already hear the music inside my house with all of my windows closed, how much louder is that going to make it?
So increase is about a little less than 1 decibel. Again, to put that in perspective, that's about 1 tap on your TV remote control. It's generally thought that for somebody to really distinguish between a 1 decibel difference, you can do that if you are a trained listener wearing special headphones in a laboratory under certain conditions. And under very careful testing like that, somebody can perceive a 1 decibel difference. Most people can't. Most people under casual use can't hear a difference between a 1 decibel change. I'd also put that in perspective that we're talking about, calibrated certified sound level meters. So the sound level meters that my company owns are generally about $6,000 a piece. Certified, called Class 1 meters, and they are accurate to plus or minus 1 decibel. So that's about where we are.
Sure, the factor. Okay.
My other question to the board, and maybe I missed this, or it was discussed, or it's something that the board can't enforce, but what is the target decibels leaving the brewery property?
I think you spoke to law as it stands right now. I think that would be sort of where we're heading. But we're trying to get your input and find a level that both the applicant and the neighbors can work with, if at all possible. When I said you spoke to the law currently, is that what was it, 10 of the property line? Is that what it was?
Yeah, so that's Mass General Law, Chapter 111, Sections 142, and then CMR, the 310 CMR 7 under air pollution state, the state law for sound level.
So yeah, I mean, those are basically the state rules say they have to be more than 10 decibels at the property.
Okay. Well, if Rosanna's recording 80 decibels on her porch, how is that ever going to go that low?
We'll be finding out during the test.
Just to clarify, it's not 10 decibels absolute, it's 10 decibels above the background.
Above ambient.
Above ambient. Okay, that's important. That's an important distinction. Do you have any ambient changes? How do you detect or determine ambient?
But for this study, we were just looking at the performance of the shed. We were looking, my understanding is that the concern was whether or not this shed would perform as needed. That's where the suspect looked at. So we didn't look at it.
In other words, making sure that it was 10 above ambient, limited to the property owner was not part of the big.
Yeah. I think that could create an issue that we should talk about briefly, which is that if we're talking about 2 different standards now, one standard that Member Harden was referring to was not under the Singleton's charge, so the shed may reduce the sound overall, but we don't know about the 10 decibel over the ambient.
Well, the other issue, Mass DEP does allow, so Mass DEP applies to non-permanent events too. So, generally these, for this one type of use, which is permitted, Mass DEP doesn't apply.
Okay. I think that requires a little review, and I'll ask you to do a little research, see if you can find anything specifically predominantly. I don't know if that's an event permit or, but what I'm hearing, just applying logic, is that you could possibly apply those regulations to live music. And if we accept live music, which the board is considering right now, then our standards would need to flex. I mean, that sounds reasonable to me. But we also need to consider the neighbors' needs, and that's the point of the test. So there's the balance that I would look at. Anything else?
No, we're just interested in joining the study. If somebody wants to come into the house and put a meter in there and see what it sounds like, that's good with us. We appreciate anything that can be done.
Okay, thank you. And hopefully you have Senator Bag's email so that you can. Okay, great. And also, I said Nibel first, not Nibel, and I apologize.
Oh, it's okay. We'll answer anything.
Okay.
I'm trying to just clarify that I don't think anything that we're talking about is going to be inside the proposal surgery. I think what else I heard was the proposal from exterior locations. I just wanted to stick to that. I think going inside is going to be way more than we're not talking about it. So I just want to clarify. I think we may visit a couple properties on Fort Hill. If the applicant and client will agree to do that. I think so far it's 17 and 19 are basically across the street.
Yeah.
So it gives at least that rational connection.
It'll be a driveway standard.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
That's a great.
I don't think that's sufficient for that as well.
Yeah, we will not go inside. Okay, I see Rosanna raise her hand, and I don't see anyone else that's asked to speak, so, Rosanna, go ahead.
Excuse me, sorry, Rosanna, we turned the volume of the microphones up since you mentioned sound quality is bad, so if you could just tell us if it's improved at all, that'd be good.
It's much better, so thank you. I'm not sure, I was echoing for a bit there. But I just wanted to say one or two things, and I just want to clarify for everybody who cares. We are totally in favor of live music, and it's not a zero-sum game. Like if Eric gets what he wants, we lose, or if we get what we want, he loses. That I don't think it's the right way to frame this. What I don't understand is why the speakers don't point in the direction of the industrially zoned land. There's a gravel company. It could go towards that. Maybe you guys could help me understand that. And then just the other thing I want to say is that I'm by training a speech pathologist. I have background in acoustics and in audiology. And when people hear 1 decibel, they think, oh, it's not very much. But a decibel is not a linear scale of measurement. And maybe our expert here could talk about that a little bit. 1 decibel is not just a little bit. It's a logarithmic increase. And so I also want to say that there is in the human hearing apparatus something called the acoustic reflex. And when you have sound that is above 80 decibels, your trapezius muscles, the muscles of your ossicular chain tighten, and your ear actually tries to attenuate the signal. And after an hour, you really can't lower the signal anymore, and the sound comes and it damages your hearing, damages your cochlea. So if we're constantly being subjected to 80 decibels and more for more than 1 hour, I just want to put that out there that just physiologically it's not healthy for people. It's not good for your hearing. And I think we should talk about sort of the psychoacoustics of what is a decibel. It's more than you think. And maybe you could talk about that, sir. And I really appreciate your clarification of the other points.
There's a lot to that. So the way, so I don't want to keep everybody here for an hour going over the statistics. But yeah, so we use the decibel scale is, you're correct, the decibel scale is not a linear scale, it's a logarithmic scale. It makes the math a little bit more complicated, but it reflects how our human hearing works. And what that means is that we go from, say, 1 decibel to 2 decibels. 2 decibels is not perceived as twice the amplitude of 1 decibel. It's actually a very small, we perceive that as a very small increase in level. So a single decibel is in fact a very small increase, and in fact is very difficult for most people to detect. Now, when you start talking about 1 decibel versus 10 decibel versus 20 and so on, at that point you start getting relatively significant increases in the sound energy being produced, but our human hearers don't hear that proportionally in the way that the energy is. Yeah. This is without really a blackboard and really being able to talk about that. It's very difficult to talk.
No, it's fascinating. But I think the overall point that was trying to be raised is that if it's at a certain level, it's too loud, and we'll find that out when we experience it personally. So I would sort of answer that without, you gave the right answer, but our answer is we're going to come out and listen. If we find it, we couldn't live with it, then, that'll tell us something.
Yeah, and that's why I was hoping that you might have a device, an actual calibrated device, because 50 to 70 decibels is one different than 80 to 100 decibels. As far as that, because it is logarithmic. So,
well, obviously the higher numbers are allowed, but the actual, the difference between how you perceive 80 to 90 versus 50 to 60, that end up both ways. You still hear it. You still hear it as a subjective doubling of sound. It's just more, like, just higher level of time.
All right, are there any other questions from the public? Just speak, so I know that you're interested in speaking. I'm seeing anyone? Going once?
Me?
Wait, go ahead. Did you want to say something? Was that Mr.
Yes.
Knible again?
Yes, it's me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Just one thing that Rosanna touched on that makes sense to us, and we don't know why it hasn't been talked about. Well, why aren't the speakers going toward the asphalt plant? Why couldn't that be done? There's nobody there at night to bother, and I don't know why it's not being discussed at all. Is that some kind of solution that would make everybody happy?
Honestly, my concern with that is that noise would bounce off all the trailers and bounce right back.
That's a good point, yeah.
But
I mean, I don't know the answer. I doubt if Attorney Lane does either at this point. The plans are basically laid out.
Right, but you're talking about turning the speakers against a metal building that's what, 2 stories tall and is going to be what, 30 feet maybe away? And how far are the trailers away from where the stage is proposed? And those are only 10 feet high, right?
I'll let Attorney Lane.
So we discussed this with Mr. Single. I can say more, but the idea was that we're trying to do what will cause the greatest reduction at Clap Street and do as little increase as possible on Fort Hill. Mr. Singleton's opinion, not been modeled or tested, but his opinion is that if we were to turn the speakers towards storage containers, we would not have as great a reduction at Clap Street. And doing what we're planning here, as he has described consistently multiple times, would be a barely perceptible increase on Fort Hill. That's why we're doing it.
I think that's a fair response. Okay. Any other questions for the public? Once. Don't see anyone. Twice. Okay, so we got a few things to discuss. We didn't have enough time to digest all the information. We kind of went through and discussed I think it was the water component here, stormwater, and didn't see anything, but I want to more officially review that at the next meeting. We'll definitely have to go through the lighting plan because we don't have that at all, but we haven't seen that. I think that I want to just touch on one more thing before we wrap up tonight, and that's to try to, because I'm asking Jeff to come at us with a draft next meeting, I want to touch a little bit on how we might consider, the plan here is that there's going to be some scheduling, that before our next meeting, and I think you've thrown a date out, we'll talk about that in a second, we'll have this in-person state visit, hopefully with all hands on deck so that we get the best possible result. And then we're going to come back and have a meeting. We're going to go over the light plan. We're going to go over more officially the stormwater, and we will put conditions in play that lay out how we, the truth is, because we're having this result, this test beforehand, I don't think we're conditioning on sound. We're going to decide then if it's going to work or if it's not. So does anyone see any difference there, Jeff?
I was following along with the stormwater light and the site visit, but I didn't understand what you were suggesting with the condition.
Well, originally I was considering come back after 6 months to prove that the sound is right. I'm not seeing that because we're having a test before. That's no longer the strategy that I think we're thinking about.
Yeah, I think given where we've been and where we are and where we want to go, I think some kind of condition to check in after the band shell is constructed, I think is worthwhile, but maybe it's less robust than we were initially thinking.
Just ask for a report.
Something along those lines, yeah.
A report of what?
Well, I think that I don't know yet, so I think that that's part of the thing that we have to just talk through. Some of it may depend on how the site visit goes, and if everyone is agreeable that the reduction, that the proposed reduction is gonna really be a positive impact, then that would probably result in a certain kind of condition. But if questions that come up from that there might be, still some issues of determined. I just don't want to cement us. I think we have an opportunity to try to draft a condition that isn't overburdensome, but just gives the planning board I think the responsibility to check in after the structure is actually built.
Okay, so that might still be on the table. It needs discussion, and I don't personally see anything formative at this point. I mean, it sounds like sound would be the only check-in, unless someone could think of something else. But we'll discuss that after the next meeting. Well, he's right. We're not laying out a condition now, but I'm trying to, I'm trying to see if we need that, like, enforcement language in advance that might be close, but I don't think we're there either.
I don't think we're there, and I think the idea is, well, at the final meeting would be a condition, maybe there'd be a condition about some kind of future check-in or not. I mean, I think that's really where we would end up. I think we can propose language and discuss whether it's necessary. So then I think the question about the site visit is making sure that the applicant is on board with coordinating this with us.
Yes.
And then it sounded to me like there would be value in 3 locations. 1 at Platt and 2 at the front of Fort Hill, like across the street, as a general approach. Can we figure out how to coordinate that as an early evening kind of site visit for the board members who are used to coming in at that time?
Yes. I don't know. I mean, it's really up to everyone involved, but we can give a couple of days that would be preferable for us. Say next week, Monday or Tuesday. Either of those 2 days. Say 7 p.m. Either Monday or Tuesday of next week.
Are you still allowing the public speak?
Is there another question? Yeah, let me get this done and then I will return because I want. Just one moment. Please. So we're talking about Monday. I'm good. Right. Oh.
Yeah, we're not even here for a little bit. Yeah, just pop the crystal there. My Danny's out here. Things all right. That's no problem. Technically, I know. Yeah.
Me too. I'm not even here.
Well, I've been okay. So you guys are okay with that? So we're hoping that it could be on a Monday or a Tuesday, 6 o'clock of next week. Okay. And now I see, is that something that's workable with you? Well, he'll need time to work it out. So at this point, Ms. Hayden, go ahead.
Well, I noticed that Sue was here at the meeting and she lives over in the condos. And I think it could be helpful to have a sound sample conducted over there. She's not here to speak up right now, I guess, but I know that the further down the road condos can hear it too. And I really appreciate what John said earlier. I don't think this should just be one and done because of, some decision made somewhere earlier down the line. I think that really you guys should look at, we would like to be great neighbors to Eric. We'd like his business to thrive. We'd like everybody to be able to hear live music. It is not an impossibility that could be achieved in conjunction with respect towards neighbors and a peaceful neighborhood. So I hope we can all work it out. That's all I want to say. I have, hope in my heart that that this process can be a good one and that we don't just settle on something because, it malicious compliance or or what, I don't know. But yeah, thanks a lot. And I appreciate you guys letting me ask questions and talk. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So, Jeff, you suggested 3 different locations. If she said there's possibilities of others, I leave it to you all to see, to offer and manage where we're going to be going that day. But I don't think it should be too far off the beaten track. So,
yeah, that's a lot of, I would rather suggest that we've heard no actual testimony from anyone other than residents on Fort Hill or Platt. I feel comfortable coordinating with people who live farther along those that would have another or
I think that's a, I think that's reasonable close radius than any radii extract further and further and further.
Yeah. That's okay with where I think going to 17 and 19 Fort Hill and then Fox Street. I think we have to call it a day at some point and do retest that. That'll take the better part of it. I guess all three of those sites.
And I would say that on behalf of my client, we're only agreeing to do Ms. Fisher's house on Class Street 17 and 19 referring to people who testified.
Okay, so be it. Monday or Tuesday next week, or Tuesday next week, 6 p.m. You guys let us know which and coordinate with,
It's looking like Tuesday most likely, but Mr. Singleton, I have to work something else out about Tuesday evening, and I'll confirm with the.
Okay. In that case, I think I'm going to close the public speak. I don't see anyone else raising their hand. The only thing we have to figure out is what date is our next meeting. So that's
Hopefully, it would technically be June 7th. Because the way the calendar rolls on May, there's 5 Tuesdays. June 7th is the next scheduled planning board meeting.
Will that work for you?
I can be present. I just respect the process for this board. I'm on behalf of my clients, I'm getting concerned. Is there an end in sight? Is June 7th expected to be? And I understand we made a bunch of submissions, many one of which was an hour and a half before this. So I understand that no decision can be made tonight, and I also understand that sound, although outdoor music is already permitted, the board is making clear that it's conditioning any approval of special permit on addressing the noise issues in the neighborhood. My client is fully on board and clear from having hired an expert to address with doing these demonstrations. Is it expected, though, that June 7th would be the meeting at which a decision is finally made on all aspects of the application?
Last meeting, it was my expectation that that would happen at this meeting because we'd had materials in hand. We didn't. And so
Again,
my expectation,
blame acknowledged.
Yeah, my expectation is that it will be next meeting, given that we have. I can't, it's an expectation. Ultimately, it comes down to the board to determine their comfort level and whether they want to request an additional piece of information. My general sense is next meeting with only lighting, a real review, and it's already passed the first muster of the stormwater plan, and our evaluation of sound, which probably is the biggest issue, that we're going to be making a decision, I think.
Can I just say that in order to help expedite things, if there are concerns with either the water calcs or Mr. Squire's lighting plan, do we know that ahead of time?
We can't discuss at a site visit. We can only gather the information. We can have no discussions about it when we're there at the meeting. It's really important for us not to say things like that's good, or, you know, we can ask questions of you while we're there, but we can in no way deliberate when we're at the site visit. And we can't talk about it in any way, shape, or form until we attend our next meeting. The only thing I could do for you, and I throw it out there, is we could potentially try to have a meeting soon.
So I think the key, I think the key is that the city engineer would have potentially 2 weeks to review and confirm that the calculations look good. And I think we have a member who believes that to be true. I think that that's the path we would try to follow, is make sure the city engineer has some time, which is what wasn't afforded to him this time, to just report simply to the planning board that the stormwater have to look appropriate for the size of the wave area in the basin. So that's how, I think that was how we would treat that within the next 2 weeks. And I think lighting should be straightforward, as you described, if the consultant can show that there's not casting onto neighboring properties and such. So those two issues should be able to be resolved in the next meeting.
But we can't have discussion about the sound until we have.
Correct. So, okay, that's fine. Thank you.
All right. With that, then, I think, did we say June 7th?
Yeah.
Is that the first item on the agenda that day?
Yes. Part of that.
And, yeah, so.
So we're looking for a meeting to continue till June 7th.
Make a motion to continue, the Eric Burns 2017 special permit, the hearing to June 7th at 6 p.m.
There's a second. All in favor? Any abstentions? Okay, and that's it for us. So I think Jesse's left. I won't be returning to him. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll see you next Tuesday. The question for you guys, do we have any announcements?
No.
No issues to discuss. That leaves us with a motion to adjourn. Exactly. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any against the intent? I didn't want to. Have a good night. We are adjourned.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.